The cleaner and the CEO, a cleaning woman, was mopping the floor at a luxury party. But an unexpected gesture amid the sparkle of champagne glasses catches the attention of a wealthy man. What begins with a misunderstanding transforms into an invitation, a challenge, and a chance for a fresh start. And a story that seemed improbable becomes a symbol of transformation, both inside and outside the company walls. If this story interests you, don't forget to subscribe to our channel and tell us which city you're watching from. We'll continue. I promise this will be the best story you'll ever hear in your life. In the urban landscape of New York City, where mirrored glass skyscrapers contrasted with forgotten communities, Rachel Sanders woke up every day at 5 in the morning. At 23, she divided her days between working as a cleaner in a commercial building in the financial district and studying business administration at a private university on the East Side at night. The small apartment in Queens that she shared with her mother, Clara, was modest but impeccably organized. That April morning, while preparing coffee, Rachel looked at the notification from the university about late tuition payments. 3 months of delinquency and her enrollment would be cancelled. All the effort of 2 years lost. "It'll work out. Honey, it always does," Clara said, appearing in the kitchen in her cafeteria worker uniform. At 55, her face carried the marks of a life of work, but her eyes maintained an unshakable hope. Rachel nodded, tucking the notification into her worn backpack. "I'll talk to the coordinator today. Maybe I can get more time." On the other side of the city, in a penthouse in Manhattan, Gabriel Morrison contemplated the metropolis through the bulletproof windows of his penthouse. At 40, the technology sector entrepreneur had built an empire. GM Solutions, a reference in security software. Ironically, his personal life had crumbled precisely because of a security breach. He had found messages revealing that Laura, his ex-wife, was having an affair with Marcus, his business partner and college friend. The divorce had happened 8 months ago. The dissolution of the partnership 6 months ago. Since then, Gabriel had lived among monitoring screens, financial reports, and sleeping pills. The company was growing, but he was withering inside. "Your son called, sir," informed Teresa, the housekeeper, as she entered the office. "He said he couldn't reach you on your cell phone." Gabriel checked his device. 5 missed calls from Peter, his 10-year-old son, who lived with his mother. "I'll call him back now," he replied, feeling the weight of his paternal absence. That afternoon, Rachel faced lines at the university's financial department. The response was procedural. Without payment, no classes. On her way to work, she received a call from the cleaning company. There would be an important event that night at the Fairmont Hotel, and they needed reinforcement. Extra payment. She accepted immediately. At the same hotel, Gabriel would participate in a dinner with potential foreign investors. GM Solutions was preparing to go public, and that night would be crucial to impress the market. The hall sparkled with crystal and silverware. Rachel and 5 other employees received clear instructions to remain invisible, discreetly cleaning any inconvenience that arose. Dressed in the company's black and white uniform, she circulated around the edges of the event, observing that world that seemed to exist in another dimension. That's when a waiter stumbled, dropping a tray with champagne glasses. In seconds, Rachel was there kneeling, preventing the liquid from reaching the Persian carpet. With agile and precise movements, she absorbed the champagne before it could cause permanent damage. "See how efficient they are?" commented Ronald Bergman, the hotel owner, to Gabriel. "Some of them do more than cleaning, if you know what I mean," he added with a malicious smile. Gabriel observed the young woman. There was something in her silent dignity that intrigued him. He approached as she was finishing cleaning. "You work with great dedication," he said, extending a glass. "You deserve a sip after the effort." Rachel looked up, surprised by the approach. She immediately understood the veiled insinuation between the lines. "Thank you, but I'm working," she replied firmly, getting up. Without showing the indignation that boiled inside, she withdrew with the posture of someone who carries their own dignity as their only wealth. Behind the scenes, an older colleague, Judy, noticed her discomfort. "What's wrong, girl?" "Nothing." Rachel replied, holding back tears of anger. Listen here, Judy held her hands. Someone's honor can't be measured by what they wear or by the work they do. Remember that. Those words calmed Rachel. She finished her shift, returned home on a crowded bus, and fell asleep exhausted, not knowing that night had planted the seed of a change that not even her boldest dreams could predict. The next morning, Gabriel woke up restless. The image of the young cleaner kneeling in the banquet hall remained in his mind like a persistent discomfort. Something in her look had disturbed him. It wasn't submission, but a silent dignity that contrasted with everything around her. While having coffee, he opened his laptop and accessed the hotel's security recordings. As a VIP client, he had access to the system. He was trying to understand why that brief encounter had affected him so much. He located the sequence, the waiter stumbling, the young woman acting quickly, his own clumsy approach. Reviewing the scene with distance, Gabriel felt ashamed. Ronald, Bergman's comment and his own attitude had been despicable. He continued watching the images. The camera captured the moment when the young woman, behind the scenes, discreetly wiped away a tear while her older colleague consoled her. There wasn't the behavior of someone looking for dubious opportunities, but of a person wounded in her dignity. What an idiot I was, he muttered to himself. At that very moment, Rachel faced another setback. At the university, the coordinator was categorical. Without payment of the overdue tuition by the end of the week, she would be dropped. In the hallway, a classmate informed her about a selection process for internships at technology companies, with scholarships that could cover part of her studies. I don't have a chance, Rachel replied. Those internships go to people with connections, not to cleaners. You're not just a cleaner, her friend shot back. You're one of the best students in the course. On the way to work, Rachel made impossible mental calculations. She would need 3 months of full salary to pay off the debt to the college, something unfeasible while helping her mother with household bills. Arriving at the building where she regularly worked, she received a call from the cleaning company. There was a request for her to present herself at the New Dawn salon in Queens, coincidentally her own neighborhood. But I don't work in that sector, she contested. It was a specific request. Important client wants to talk to you, replied the supervisor. Go now, it's urgent. Intrigued and apprehensive, Rachel headed to the location, a small beauty salon where her mother worked on Thursdays as a manicurist. Upon entering, she found Clara with a confused expression and a man with his back turned, observing the street through the storefront. Honey, this gentleman came looking for you, said Clara. When the man turned around, Rachel immediately recognized the businessman from the previous night. Her body stiffened on alert. How did you find me? She asked, keeping her distance. Your badge had your full name. It wasn't difficult, Gabriel replied, visibly uncomfortable. Can I talk to you for 5 minutes? Clara sensed the tension. I'll prepare some coffee. No need, Mum. He's already leaving. Please, insisted Gabriel. I came to apologize. My behavior yesterday was unacceptable. The sincere request caught her by surprise. Rachel hesitated, then indicated the small table in the corner of the salon. They sat down, maintaining formal distance. I saw the hotel recordings, he explained. I realized how Bergman's comment and my attitude were offensive. You didn't deserve that. No, I didn't, agreed Rachel, not giving ground. Gabriel took a deep breath. I discovered that you study business administration. How do you know that? Your profile on social media is public. I read about your university projects. You have talent. Rachel crossed her arms, suspicious. What do you want from me exactly? To offer an opportunity. My company, GM Solutions, has an open internship program. From what I read about you, you would be perfect for the Social Projects Department. Social Projects Department? And why? Do you think I would be interested? Because it pays 3 times more than your current job and includes a scholarship, Gabriel replied directly. I thought it might help. Rachel's heart raced. It was exactly what she needed, at the exact moment. Said seemed too good to be true, which usually meant it was. And what's the catch? She questioned. Gabriel seemed genuinely confused. What do you mean? Nobody crosses the city to offer a job to a cleaner without expecting something in return. I'm trying to correct a mistake, he replied. I saw your potential. I read your college work. You could transform a department that honestly only exists for marketing. Rachel studied his face, looking for signs of falsehood. She found only genuine tiredness and something that seemed like regret. I have conditions, she finally said. I'm listening. I want to be treated like any other intern. No favoritism, no special treatment. I'll be evaluated exclusively for my work. Fair enough. And if at any time I perceive any insinuation or inappropriate behavior, I leave immediately. Gabriel nodded. I can guarantee a respectful work environment. You'll report to the HR department, not directly to me. Clara approached with a tray. The coffee got cold. I made another one. The interruption broke the tension. Rachel accepted the cup, allowing herself a moment to process that unexpected turn of events. When would I start? She asked. On Monday. HR will send the details by email. When Gabriel left, Clara hugged her daughter, emotional. It's your chance, honey. I don't know, Mum. It seems strange. He treated me like a, and now he shows up offering a job. People make mistakes, Rachel. Some have the courage to correct them. And what if it's some kind of trap? Clara held her daughter's face between her hands. Dignity isn't synonymous with refusal, and holding your head high isn't the same as turning your back. If he's sincere, you gain an opportunity. If he's not, you leave with your head held high, as you've always done. That night, Rachel researched GM Solutions. The company was a reference in digital security and had been expanding into technological inclusion projects. In interviews, Gabriel Morrison talked about social transformation through technology, but the project seemed superficial, exactly as he had admitted. On Sunday, she received an email from HR with the necessary documentation. It was real. Monday. At 8 a.m., she presented herself at the imposing headquarters of the company in Manhattan. As she walked through the glass doors with her only blazer and a folder bought the night before, she felt like an intruder. Rachel Sanders called a receptionist. Follow me, please. She was led to the Human Resources Department where she signed the internship contract. Then, she was introduced to the Social Projects Department team, 3 people who seemed more occupied with reports than with real impact. Your space is here, indicated Marina, the coordinator, showing a desk in the corner. These are the reports from the last projects. Familiarize yourself with them. Upon opening the folders, Rachel found dozens of half-abandoned initiatives, poorly used funds, and wasted opportunities. It was a gold mine for someone who knew the reality of peripheral communities. At the end of the day, while organizing her new space, she noticed Gabriel passing through the corridor. He nodded discreetly in her direction, without approaching, respecting their agreement. Rachel felt, for the first time in a long time, a spark of hope. There, among those dusty folders and abandoned projects, perhaps there existed the opportunity to create something truly transformative, not just for her own life, but for people like her who only needed a chance. Rachel didn't take long to realize that the Social Projects Department of GM Solutions was just an elaborate facade. The folders she received contained impeccable reports with colorful graphs and photos of smiling children. But the reality behind those numbers was different. Most of the projects never left the paper or were one-time actions without continuity. During her second week while organizing the files, she found a report about a digital inclusion project in Queens, her own neighborhood. According to the document, the company had donated 20 computers to a public school and offered programming workshops. Rachel knew that school. Her younger cousin studied there. There had never been new computers, much less workshops. Marina, can I ask a question? She approached the coordinator who was typing distractedly on her computer. This project in Queens, when was it from? From last year, I think. Why? It's just that I know the school. I live nearby. I've never seen those computers working. Marina sighed, looking around before answering in a low voice. Look, Rachel, between us, many of these projects are more for the annual sustainability report than to actually work. We deliver the computers, take the photos, the marketing, department publicizes it, and that's it. And nobody checks afterward. Who would check? The CEO, the shareholders? They want financial results, not social ones. This is just for show, as they say. That conversation ignited something inside Rachel. That night, instead of going straight home after work, she took a bus to Professor Zilda Gomez Public School. The principal, Ms. Martha, was still there. Computers. Ah, yes, we received them. They're over there in room 12, she explained, leading Rachel to a small, dusty room. The equipment was piled in a corner, still in boxes, some with plastic opened. We don't have a technician to install them, nor adequate internet. And nobody from the company came back after the delivery. Rachel photographed everything with her cell phone. The next day, instead of following the filing routine that had been assigned to her, she began mapping all similar projects. She discovered a pattern: donations without follow-up, workshops that lasted only one day, partnerships that existed only on letterhead. For 2 weeks, she worked silently, compiling real data, visiting locations after hours, talking with school principals and community leaders. She filled an entire notebook with notes, photos, and testimonials. On a Thursday, when the department was practically empty, she created a detailed presentation. It wasn't just criticism. It included a complete action plan: how to recover abandoned projects, how to create real impact metrics, how to transform one-time actions into continuous programs. "What are you doing, Rachel?" asked Carlos, another intern from the department, seeing her so concentrated. "I'm preparing a proposal," she replied without taking her eyes off the screen. "What kind of proposal?" "Of how to make this department work for real." Carlos laughed. "You're new here, aren't you? Nobody is interested in making it work. It's just for the social balance sheet." "We'll see," replied Rachel, determined. The next morning, she requested a meeting with Marina. The coordinator seemed surprised by the request but agreed to receive her after lunch. "So what's so important?" asked Marina, discreetly checking her watch. Rachel opened her laptop and started the presentation. Slide after slide, she showed the discrepancy between what was reported and what was real, but without an accusatory tone. Then she presented her action plan: revitalization of existing projects, creation of partnerships with local NGOs, corporate volunteer program, monitoring metrics. Marina was silent for a few moments. "Rachel, do you realize what you're suggesting? This would multiply our work by 10. We have a limited budget and only 3 people on the team. With the current budget, we can do much more if we apply it correctly. And as for the team, many company employees would like to participate in meaningful projects. It's just a matter of creating a structured volunteer program. Even so, we would need approval from the board. The CEO would never..." "Can I present it to him?" Marina's eyes widened. "To Gabriel Morrison? Impossible. He barely comes to these department meetings." "Then who can I present it to?" "Look, at most I can schedule with Paul Rivers, the administrative director, but I warn you, he only cares about numbers." "Great, I have numbers." The following Tuesday, Rachel presented her project to Paul Rivers, a middle-aged man with a bored expression. She spoke with passion, but maintaining the professional tone she had learned by observing executives in the corridors. "Interesting, Miss Sanders," said Paul at the end, without showing real interest. "I'll evaluate and get back to you soon." Rachel knew what that meant. Her project would be shelved, but she wasn't willing to give up. That same afternoon, against all the unwritten rules of the company, she sent an email directly to Gabriel Morrison. Subject: Transforming Social Projects into Real Impact. "Mr. Morrison, attached is a proposal for revitalizing the Social Projects Department, developed after detailed analysis of existing programs. I believe it aligns with your vision of social transformation through technology, mentioned in several interviews. If you can dedicate 15 minutes of your time for a complete presentation, I would be grateful. Sincerely, Rachel Sanders." She sent it and held her breath. She would probably be reprimanded for breaking the hierarchy, maybe even fired. But she preferred to try and fail than to continue pretending she was doing something meaningful. To her surprise, 10 minutes later, she received a response. 20th floor meeting room. Tomorrow, 8 a.m. That night was one of intense preparation. Rachel reviewed each piece of data, refined her presentation, rehearsed each argument. Clara, seeing her so concentrated at the small kitchen table, served her a cup of tea. "It's your chance to show who you are, honey. And if he doesn't like it, Mom, I'm practically accusing his company of falsifying social results. You're showing how to improve, not accusing. There's a huge difference." At 7:30 the next morning, Rachel was already in the meeting room, connecting her laptop to the projector. At 7:55, Gabriel entered, alone, without assistants or directors. "Good morning, Rachel," he greeted formally. "I was curious about your email. Few employees have the courage to write directly to me." "Good morning, sir. Thank you for the opportunity." "You have 15 minutes as requested." Rachel began her presentation. She showed the inconsistencies without accusing, presented the problems as opportunities for improvement. When she reached her proposals, she noticed that Gabriel had leaned forward, truly interested. This community garden project with nutritional education and training for small businesses, how would it work in practice, he asked, interrupting her for the first time. Rachel explained in detail, connecting the project to the company name, showing how to create a virtuous cycle of social impact and positive visibility. "And this one about true digital inclusion? Why do you say the previous one was superficial?" "Because donating computers without creating a continuous learning ecosystem is like giving a car to someone without teaching them to drive," Rachel replied. "We need follow-up, mentorship, connection with real work opportunities." At the end of the 15 minutes, Gabriel remained silent, looking at the notes he had made. "What's the budget needed to implement all this?" he finally asked. "The same that's already allocated to the department. The difference is how we apply the resources." Gabriel smiled for the first time. "Impressive. I'll go further. I approve your plan and double the budget, but with one condition." "Which one?" "You coordinate the implementation directly without intermediaries." Rachel felt a chill in her stomach. "But what about Marina?" "She'll continue as the formal coordinator, but you'll have autonomy to execute. You'll report directly to me for the next 3 months. If it works, we'll restructure the department." Upon leaving the meeting room, Rachel felt light and heavy at the same time. She had achieved much more than she expected, but now she would have to deliver concrete results. In the corridor, she met Marina, who was observing her with an indecipherable expression. "I just received an email from the CEO," said the coordinator. "It seems we have a new special project, and you're in charge." Rachel took a deep breath. "I'm not taking your place, Marina. I'll need your experience." "I doubt it, but good luck, you'll need it." In the following weeks, Rachel immersed herself in implementing the plan. She started with the public school in Queens, organizing an IT task force to properly install the computers and train teachers. She created partnerships with small local NGOs, established clear monitoring metrics, recruited volunteers from within the company itself. Each small victory was documented not just in reports, but in real stories, with names and faces. Gradually, the department that previously existed only on paper gained life and purpose. After 2 months of intense work, GM Solutions' social projects were beginning to show concrete results. At the public school in Queens, students not only used the computers but participated in basic programming workshops taught by volunteer engineers from the company. In Brooklyn, the community garden flourished under the care of families learning about urban agriculture and local entrepreneurship. In the Bronx, a financial education program for female heads of households already had 30 regular participants. Rachel kept Gabriel informed through objective weekly reports and bi-weekly meetings. He rarely made long comments, but his look of approval was evident. What had begun as an attempt at reparation was transforming into something larger and more significant. On a rainy Wednesday, upon arriving at the company, Rachel noticed different looks in her direction. Whispers ceased when she passed, sighed. Smiles appeared among some colleagues. In the department, Marina received her with a tense expression. "We need to talk," said the coordinator, indicating an empty meeting room. "Did something happen?" Marina closed the door and showed her phone screen. It was the corporate gossip page on Instagram, where employees anonymously shared rumors about technology companies. The most recent post said, "GM Solutions intern gets special project after private meeting with CEO, meritocracy or something more." Rachel felt her blood freeze. The post included a photo of her leaving the elevator next to Gabriel, taken from a distance, probably after one of their meetings. "This is absurd," she protested. "You know how hard I worked for this project." "I know," replied Marina, surprisingly supportive, "but the entire company is commenting. Paul Rivers has already questioned me 3 times about how an intern got direct access to the CEO. I'll talk to Gabriel." "That will only make the rumors worse, Rachel." Ignoring the advice, Rachel sent a message requesting an urgent meeting. The response came quickly. "I'm in external meetings all day. We can talk tomorrow morning." The day passed like slow torture. Rachel tried to focus on work, but each look, each whisper seemed to confirm that the rumors were spreading. In the cafeteria, she chose an isolated table but was surprised by Carlos, the intern from her department. "May I sit down?" She nodded, grateful for the friendly company. "Don't mind what they're saying," he said, pure jealousy. "Thank you, Carlos, but it's hard to ignore. I know how it is. I also come from the periphery, Brooklyn. When I got here, I heard everything. That I only got in because of quotas, that I wouldn't last a month. I didn't know you were from Brooklyn. Yeah, that's why I admire so much what you're doing with that community garden there. My grandmother lives nearby. She told me how. It's changing people's lives." That conversation brought brief comfort, but upon returning to her desk, Rachel found an anonymous note. "Slept with the boss to climb the career ladder? Typical of people like you." Tears of anger burned her eyes. She put the paper in the drawer and tried to focus on work. At 6 in the evening, when most had already left, she received a call from Gabriel. "I just saw your message. What happened?" Rachel explained the situation, keeping her voice firm despite the lump in her throat. "This is unacceptable," he replied, visibly irritated. "I'll request an internal investigation to identify who's spreading these rumors." "No, please, it'll only draw more attention." "Then what do you suggest?" "I don't know. Maybe it's better if I step away from the project for a while." "No. Wait, your work is excellent. I won't allow petty gossip to interfere." His concerns seemed genuine, but Rachel feared that any direct action would only fuel more rumors. The next day, the situation worsened. Upon arriving for the scheduled meeting with Gabriel, she was informed that he had been called for an emergency. On her way back to her department, she realized that her files on the server had been moved. Some important documents from the community garden project had simply disappeared. Marina denied any involvement. "It must be some system error. I'll ask IT to check." 2 hours later, the IT technician informed that the files had been deleted by a user with valid credentials, but he couldn't identify which one. Rachel had to reconstruct weeks of work from notes and partial backups. At the end of the day, she received an email from the board. There would be an audit of the social projects. All expenses, contracts, and partnerships would be reviewed. The formal tone barely disguised the underlying distrust. That night, she arrived home exhausted. Clara immediately perceived that something was wrong. "What happened, honey?" Rachel collapsed on the sofa and told her everything. Her mother listened in silence, then held her hands. "You have 2 options: give up and prove that they're right about you not belonging in that place, or continue and prove that they're wrong." "It's not that simple, Mom. They're sabotaging me. And since when has life been easy for us? Remember when your father left? When we went 3 months without electricity because we couldn't pay? We survived, Rachel. We always survive." Clara's words, as always, hit the exact point. Rachel spent the night rewriting reports, recovering contacts, reorganizing the lost work. The next morning, upon arriving at the company, she found a note on her desk. 18th floor meeting room, 9 a.m. GM. Upon entering the indicated room, she found not only Gabriel but also Paul Rivers and 2 other directors she didn't know. "Good morning, Rachel," Gabriel greeted formally. "These are Eduardo Campos, financial director, and Luciana Prado, our corporate lawyer." Rachel's heart accelerated. This looked like a disciplinary commission, not a work meeting. "We called you here," continued Gabriel, "because allegations about improper favoritism and possible inappropriate relationship between us have reached the Administrative Council." "That's completely false," protested Rachel. "We know that," intervened Luciana. "But we need to treat the matter seriously for legal and reputational reasons." Paul Rivers, who until then had maintained a neutral expression, leaned forward. "The question is, why did a newly hired intern receive autonomy to manage projects with significant budget without going through the appropriate hierarchical channels?" "Because she presented exceptional proposals that no one else had thought of," replied Gabriel, before Rachel could defend herself. "I have the presentations and reports filed in case you want to analyze them." "Even so," insisted Paul, "the correct procedure would be to implement through the existing coordination, not create a direct channel by passing the hierarchy." Eduardo, the financial director, who until then had only observed, finally spoke. "The numbers don't lie. The social projects have never had such concrete results. We have testimonials from beneficiaries, clear metrics, even positive coverage in the local press." "The issue isn't efficiency, it's procedure," retorted Paul. "Maybe the procedure is wrong," replied Gabriel with calculated coldness. Rachel observed the discussion as if watching a tennis match where she was the ball. Finally, she gathered courage to intervene. "Excuse me," she said, surprising everyone. "May I speak?" "Of course," replied Luciana. "I understand the concern with procedures, but my focus has always been on results. If you think I'm overloading the structure or creating hierarchical conflicts, I can adjust my approach. What I cannot accept is the insinuation that I achieved this position through improper means." A heavy silence hung in the room. It was Paul. "Who broke it?" "I propose a 30-day probationary period. Miss Sanders will continue on the project, but reporting formally to the coordination, not directly to the CEO. At the end of this period, we'll evaluate the results." Gabriel seemed to want to protest, but Rachel was quicker. "I accept." Upon leaving the meeting, she felt simultaneously victorious and defeated. She had defended her integrity, but now she would need to navigate an even more hostile environment, with critical eyes following each step. In the elevator, Gabriel caught up with her. "I'm sorry about all this." "It's not your fault." "In a way it is. I underestimated the internal resistance to change." "I'll continue the work, reporting to Marina as requested, but I need to know, do you trust me to continue with this?" Gabriel looked her directly in the eyes. "I trust you completely, and I admire your courage." In that moment, something subtle changed between them. It was no longer just a professional relationship born from reparation, but a mutual respect forged in adversity. Back at the department, Marina received her with an enigmatic expression. "I heard about the meeting. It seems you're reporting to me again." "Yes," confirmed Rachel, preparing for hostility. "Good," replied Marina, surprising her. "Because I need your help to understand these projects. What you've built is impressive and I want to learn." The following weeks were a delicate balance between advancement and caution. Rachel continued developing the social projects now, formally reporting to Marina, who surprisingly had become an ally. Together, they meticulously documented each step, anticipating any questioning that might arise during the audit. The community garden project in Brooklyn was taking on larger dimensions than anticipated. What had begun as a cultivation space was transforming into a center for coexistence and learning. Ladies from the neighborhood taught planting techniques to teenagers. A retired agricultural engineer father of a GM Solutions employee, provided guidance on composting and organic cultivation. At the public school in Queens, the results also exceeded expectations. Children who had barely touched computers were now developing small games and animations. A 12-year-old student created a simple application that helped her illiterate grandmother identify medications by colors and symbols. Despite the advances, Rachel felt constantly observed. Meetings that were previously informal now required prior scheduling and detailed minutes. Minimal expenses needed triple approval. The probationary period imposed by the board made each day a test to be overcome. On a particularly difficult Wednesday, after hours trying to approve resources for a science fair at the school, Rachel decided to have lunch alone in the plaza, in front of the GM Solutions building. Sitting on a bench, she barely touched the lunch she had brought from home. "May I join you?" The male voice startled her. Looking up, she saw Carlos, the intern from her department, who had mentioned being from Brooklyn. "Sure," she replied, moving over to make room. "Tough day?" he asked, opening his own sandwich. "One more of many. I can imagine the whole company is talking about the audit of your projects." Rachel sighed. "The projects aren't mine. They're the company's. I'm just trying to make them work for real." "And they are working," affirmed Carlos with conviction. "My 12-year-old cousin is in that programming group at the public school. She had never touched a computer before. Now she wants to be a game developer." The mention brought a genuine smile to Rachel's face. "I'm glad to hear that. There are more happy people than you imagine," continued Carlos. "The problem is that in here, in the air-conditioned rooms, few understand the real impact out there." Something in the way he spoke, in the quiet conviction of his words, created an immediate connection. For a moment, Rachel felt that she wasn't alone in that battle. "Why did you choose to work here, Carlos?" "For the same reason as you, I imagine, to change things from the inside out." "Are you succeeding?" He smiled. "I'm trying. I'm in the development sector. I work with the software engineers. When there's time to spare, I'm creating an app to connect community residents to work opportunities. Nothing official yet." "That's amazing. Why don't you formally present it to the company?" "I've tried. They said it doesn't align with current strategic priorities." Rachel recognized that phrase, the corporate jargon for "we're not interested." "It could align with the social projects," she suggested, feeling an idea forming. "What do you mean?" "What if we integrated your app into the professional training program we're developing in the Bronx? It would be a perfect platform to connect participants to real opportunities." Carlos's eyes lit up. "That would be incredible. But how would we get approval?" "Leave that to me." That casual conversation transformed into the beginning of a powerful partnership. In the following days, Rachel and Carlos worked discreetly, developing an integrated proposal. Marina, when consulted, surprised, again by offering institutional coverage. Present it as a natural evolution of the existing project, not as something new. That way we avoid new layers of approval. The collaboration brought renewed energy to Rachel's work. Carlos wasn't just an ally, he was someone who truly understood the importance of what they were building. In the following weeks, they spent several nights at the company, refining the app and the integration with existing projects. On one of those nights, while reviewing the code in the development laboratory, Carlos asked an unexpected question. "Why do you care so much about all this, Rachel? Most would give up after so much resistance." She paused, considering the question seriously. "Because I know what it's like to be invisible. I grew up seeing my mother work in houses where she was treated as if she didn't exist. I saw teachers ignore brilliant students because they came from the periphery. When I got this opportunity, I swore I would make a real difference, not just for myself." Carlos observed her with an intensity that made her blush slightly. "That's why you're special," he said, almost in a whisper. The moment was interrupted by Rachel's cell phone. It was Gabriel. "Can you come to my office? I know it's late, but it's important." 10 minutes later, Rachel knocked on the CEO's office door. She found him accompanied by a boy of approximately 10 years old who was drawing attentively on a tablet. "Rachel, this is Peter, my son," Gabriel introduced. "Peter, this is Rachel, who works on the social projects I told you about. The boy raised his eyes, examining her with curiosity. You're the one who made that garden in Brooklyn? Yes, with the help of many good people. Cool, Dad, can I go show my game to Daniel now? Sure, replied Gabriel. He's in the break room. When the boy left, Gabriel explained, Daniel is my assistant. Today is Peter's visiting day, but an emergency came up at the Rio branch. Normally, I wouldn't bring him to a work meeting, but it's not a problem, assured Rachel. He seems like an amazing kid. He is. Since the separation, I've been trying to be more present, even with the chaotic schedule. Gabriel paused, reorganizing his thoughts. But I called you for another reason. The audit will be concluded tomorrow. Rachel felt a chill in her stomach. And? The results are extraordinary. All projects show impact metrics well above expectations. The board is impressed. That's great. Yes and no, Paul Rivers still questions the structure, the hierarchy. He proposed a solution that, well, I need your opinion. What solution? Create a formal position for you. Junior, manager of social projects, reporting directly to the board, no longer to the current department. Rachel frowned. That sounds good, but it would mean removing you from the direct operation of the projects. It would be a more strategic role, less hands-on. I see. The proposal was an undeniable promotion, but also an elegant way to distance her from the field, to transform her work into something more controllable, more corporate. You don't need to answer now, continued Gabriel, but I wanted you to know before tomorrow's meeting. When Rachel returned to the laboratory, she found Carlos still working on the app. Everything okay? He asked, noticing her thoughtful expression. She told him about the proposal. Carlos listened attentively, then asked, What do you want to do? I don't know. It's an incredible opportunity, but I feel like I would be abandoning the real work to become just another executive, making PowerPoint presentations. Or you could use the position to open more doors, create more projects like this one. The conversation extended into the night. When they finally left the building, it was already past midnight. Carlos insisted on accompanying her to the bus. Stop. Thank you for the support, said Rachel. It makes a difference not to be alone in this. You were never alone. You just didn't realize how many people believe in what you're doing. There was something in his look, a mixture of admiration and something deeper that made Rachel's heart race. Without thinking, she moved closer. The kiss happened naturally, a brief but intense connection loaded with mutual understanding. As they pulled apart, both smiled, a bit embarrassed, but without regret. The bus arrived, interrupting the moment. We'll talk tomorrow, said Rachel, boarding. What neither of them noticed was the figure observing from the opposite corner. Gabriel Morrison, who had gone out to get something from his car and witnessed the scene. His face showed not anger or jealousy, but a resigned understanding. The next morning, the meeting with the board was tense. Paul Rivers formally presented the promotion proposal, emphasizing how this would regularize the situation and bring Rachel into the appropriate structure. Gabriel remained strangely silent throughout the discussion. When the time came for Rachel to speak, she took a deep breath. I greatly appreciate the trust and recognition, but before accepting, I would like to propose an alternative. A murmur ran through the room. Paul Rivers frowned. Instead of just changing my position, I suggest restructuring the entire social projects department. Transform it into a social impact business unit with operational autonomy and its own performance metrics. That's much broader than what we were considering, protested Paul. Because the results are also much broader, replied Rachel. What we've built aren't just isolated projects, but a new model of corporate responsibility with measurable impact. To illustrate, she opened her laptop and showed the app developed with Carlos, explaining how it would integrate with all existing projects, creating an ecosystem of social transformation. Upon finishing her presentation, she noticed that Gabriel was observing her with an indecipherable expression. For a tense moment, no one spoke. Then, the CEO stood up. I fully support Rachel's proposal, he declared. In fact, I'll go further. I propose that 2% of the company's annual profit be directed to this new department, with autonomy to expand the projects that demonstrate concrete results. The declaration fell like a bomb. Paul Rivers seemed about to protest, but Luciana, the corporate lawyer, was quicker. From a governance and social responsibility standpoint, it would be a significant differential in the market. Few technology companies have such explicit financial commitments to social impact. The meeting extended for 2 more hours, with heated discussions about budgets, structure, and indicators. In the end, against all expectations, the proposal was approved with minor modifications. Upon leaving the meeting room, Rachel was approached by Gabriel. "Congratulations, you achieved something extraordinary today. Thank you for the support. I didn't expect such a vehement defense." Gabriel smiled, a smile that didn't completely reach his eyes. "I recognize genuine talent and purpose when I see it. And, Rachel, be happy in all aspects of your life." Something in the way he said that made Rachel realize he had seen. The kiss Carlos everything, but instead of jealousy or retaliation, he offered sincere support. In that moment, she understood that she had misjudged that man from the beginning. Behind the armor of the distant CEO, there was someone capable of recognizing his own mistake, supporting true merit and, most surprisingly, genuinely wishing the well-being of another person, even when that meant giving up his own expectations. 3. Months after the approval of the Social Impact Business Unit, GM Solutions celebrated impressive results. The app developed by Carlos, now integrated into the social projects, connected more than 200 people from the served communities to job opportunities. The community garden in Brooklyn had expanded to 3 new plots, creating an urban agriculture network that already generated income for dozens of families. The programming workshops in schools had formed the first class, with 20 teenagers receiving certificates recognized by the market. Rachel, now Director of Social Impact, divided her time between field visits and strategic meetings. Her team had grown. Marina continued as Administrative Coordinator, while Carlos had assumed leadership of the social technology sector. The relationship between them, born from that unexpected kiss, had evolved into a respectful partnership. But without the romance that many expected, after sincere conversations they realized they functioned better as professional allies than as a couple. That Friday morning, Rachel was preparing for the quarterly presentation to the board of directors. The numbers were solid, the testimonials moving, the prospects promising. Still, she felt a knot in her stomach that she couldn't explain. "Everything is ready for this afternoon," assured Marina, handing her the folder with the printed reports. "It's going to be a success, as always." Rachel nodded, trying to push away the feeling of discomfort. In recent days, she had noticed whispers that ceased when she approached, sidelong glances, a subtle tension in the air. She attributed this to the natural jealousy that accompanies success, especially when it comes from someone who had started as an intern. At noon, she received a call from Carlos. "We need to talk, now," in the 5th floor meeting room. The urgency in his voice was unusual. Upon arriving at the indicated room, she found him pale with his laptop open on the table. "What happened?" "Someone is sabotaging the project," he replied, turning the screen so she could see. "I received this anonymous email 20 minutes ago. The message was short and direct. Be careful who you trust. Check the transfer of 817 to the New Tomorrow Association. It's not what it seems." "What transfer is that?" asked Rachel, confused. "The donation to the NGO that's managing the project in the Bronx. $250,000 for building the community center. Yes, I authorized it myself. Everything is documented." Carlos typed quickly, accessing the company's financial system. "Look at this." The transfer was listed as completed, but upon checking the banking details, they realized that the recipient was not the official account of the New Tomorrow Association, but a private account in the name of an unknown company. "This isn't possible," murmured Rachel. "I checked the data personally before sending for approval." Someone altered it afterward, and guess who approved the final transfer? Paul Rivers. Rachel's blood froze. Paul, the administrative director, had never hidden his resistance to social projects, but to deliberately sabotage. "It could be a mistake," she suggested, without much conviction. "Let's talk to the association, confirm if they received the money." The call to the NGO coordinator confirmed the worst. The resource had never arrived. The community center, whose construction should have started 2 weeks earlier, was on hold due to lack of funds. "This is serious," said Carlos, closing his laptop. "If the money was diverted, we're talking about corporate fraud. We need to talk to Gabriel before the board meeting." "I can't," replied Carlos, checking his watch. "I have a meeting with the developers in 5 minutes, but you need to show this to him immediately." With her heart racing, Rachel headed to the executive floor. The secretary informed that Gabriel was in a video conference, but she insisted on the urgency of the matter. Upon entering the room, she found him finalizing a call. "Rachel, I thought you would be preparing for the presentation." "We need to talk. It's about the Bronx project." She quickly explained the situation, showing the evidence on her tablet. Gabriel listened attentively, his expression becoming more serious with each detail. "This is extremely serious," he finally said. "If confirmed, it represents not only diversion of resources, but a deliberate attempt to sabotage your work. Do you think Paul would be capable of this? He always opposed social investments, but I never imagined he would go this far." Gabriel paused, thoughtful. "We need more evidence before making formal accusations. Leave this with me for now." "And today's presentation? Proceed as planned. Don't mention this until we have absolute certainty." Rachel returned to her department, trying to maintain composure while a storm of doubts and fears formed in her mind. If Paul was willing to sabotage the project in this way, what else might he have done? And if the investigation concluded that she should have detected the fraud earlier? At 3 in the afternoon, she headed to the boardroom. Upon opening the door, she found all the directors already present, including Paul Rivers, who was observing her with a cold smile. Gabriel, surprisingly, was not there. "Gentlemen, Director Rachel will present the quarterly results to us," announced Luciana, the corporate lawyer. "But first, we have an urgent matter to address." Rachel's stomach contracted. They already knew. "It has come to the board's attention a possible irregularity involving resources destined for social projects," continued Luciana. "Paul, please." The administrative director stood up, his face a mask of false concern. "I regret to inform that we have identified a suspicious transfer of $250,000, officially destined for the new Tomorrow Association, but directed to a private account." Rachel felt the blood drain from her face. "I can explain this. Someone altered the banking data after my initial approval." "Curiously," continued Paul, ignoring her, "the beneficiary account belongs to a company called Clara Rach Services LLC, registered in the name of Clara Sanders, your mother, if I'm not mistaken." The room spun around Rachel. This made no sense. Her mother didn't have any company, much less a business account receiving diverted funds. "This is absurd," she protested. "My mother works as a cafeteria worker and manicurist. She's never had a registered company." "We have the documents," replied Paul, sliding a folder in her direction. "Company opened 3 months ago, right after the approval of the Social Impact Business Unit." Rachel opened the folder with trembling hands. There were social contracts, bank records, everything apparently legitimate. The signature on the document seemed unquestionably that of Clara, although Rachel knew it was impossible. "This is fraud. Someone forged these documents." "That's a serious accusation," replied Luciana. "Unfortunately, without Gabriel present to mediate, the board has determined your immediate removal until the conclusion of the investigation." "Where is Gabriel?" "He had a family emergency. His son Peter had an accident at school." Rachel felt cornered. Without her main ally, she faced a monstrous accusation, carefully fabricated. "Can I at least call my mother? She'll confirm she never opened any company." "Feel free," conceded Paul, "but turn in your badge and laptop before leaving the building, for security reasons." In the corridors, employees observed her as if she were a criminal being led to execution. Nobody offered a word of support, Not even a sympathetic look. Years building relationships, proving her worth, crumbled in minutes. At the exit, she found Carlos waiting for her, concerned. "What happened in there? They're saying you were suspended." With a choked voice, Rachel explained the absurd situation. Carlos listened, his face alternating between incredulity and fury. "It's an obvious setup," he concluded. "Paul Rivers always wanted to destroy the social projects." "But why? What's the point of this? Control. Power. The projects gain too much visibility, too much autonomy. They threaten the traditional model he defends." Rachel sat on the bench in the plaza in front of the building, the same one where she had had that first sincere conversation with Carlos. "Everything we built is going to crumble. Not if you fight." "How? They have documents, bank accounts, signatures. It's my word against a complete dossier." "Then we need better evidence." At that moment, Rachel's cell phone rang. It was Clara, alarmed. "Honey, there are police officers here at home with a search warrant. They're saying they're looking for documents from a company I've never heard of." Rachel's world was collapsing. It wasn't enough to destroy her career. They were dragging her mother into the scandal, invading the only place where she had always felt safe. "I'm going there now, Mom. Don't sign anything, don't answer anything without a lawyer." Upon hanging up, tears finally broke her composure. "They went to my house, Carlos. They're searching everything, treating my mother like a criminal." Carlos hugged her, offering silent support while she finally allowed herself to crumble. Years of struggle, of resistance against prejudice, of proving her worth at every step, now seemed like a naive journey, doomed to failure from the start. "Maybe it was never my place anyway," she murmured between sobs. "Who did I think I was? To believe I could change a company like this? An intern from the periphery, daughter of a domestic worker?" "Don't talk like that," protested Carlos. "You are exactly who they fear, someone with competence and true purpose." "And what good does that do? They have the power, the resources, the influence. They can fabricate any story." As the sun set over the urban horizon of New York City, Rachel faced the darkest night of her soul. Everything she had built with so much effort, each project, each transformed life, each broken barrier, everything now seemed like a mirage about to dissipate. Giving up had never seemed so rational, so inevitable. "I'm going home," she finally said. "I need to be with my mother." "I'll go with you," replied Carlos. "No, you still work there. If they associate us now, they'll destroy your career too. Someone needs to stay and protect the projects, even if from a distance." Carlos was reluctant but understood the logic. "What are you going to do?" Rachel wiped away her tears, finding within herself a last thread of strength. "I don't know yet, but one thing is certain. I won't let them destroy my mother to get to me. That they won't accomplish." When Rachel arrived at the small apartment in Queens, she found the door ajar and the interior ransacked. Books on the floor, drawers open, clothes scattered, the clear signs of the thorough search authorized by the judicial warrant. Clara was sitting in the living room armchair, her face marked by a silent dignity that contrasted with the evident violation of her home. "Mom," Rachel ran to hug her. "Are you okay?" "I am, honey." Clara's voice trembled slightly but maintained firmness. "They're already gone. They took your laptop, some of my documents, even my savings account book." "What did they say exactly?" "That I'm being investigated for participating in a money diversion scheme. They talked about a company that I supposedly opened, bank accounts I've never seen in my life." Rachel sat next to her mother, holding her calloused hands from a lifetime of work, hands that had never touched illicit money, that only knew the honesty of hard work. "It's a setup, Mom. Someone forged documents with your name to incriminate me." "But why, honey? Why would someone do this?" "Because the social projects were working, because we were proving that it's possible to make a real difference, and that bothers a lot of people." That night, while they tried to reorganize the apartment, Rachel's cell phone didn't stop ringing. Curious colleagues, a few genuinely concerned, journalists sniffing out a corporate scandal. She ignored all the calls, except one. Carlos. The eyes, Newspapers are already reporting it, he informed. A website published that the young prodigy executive of GM Solutions is being investigated for diversion of social project resources. I was expecting that. Rachel, listen, I gained access to the financial system logs. The alteration of the banking data was made from a terminal on the 18th floor, where Paul Rivers' office is. Does that prove it was him? Not directly. Any director could have used that terminal, but it's a start. After hanging up, Rachel sat at the kitchen table with a notebook and began drawing a timeline. When had it all begun? Who gained from her fall? What were the connections between the events? The pattern that emerged was disturbing. Each significant advance of the social projects had been followed by some type of obstacle or sabotage. The deleted files, the rumors about her relationship with Gabriel, and now the fabricated fraud, everything seemed part of a larger plan. "What are you doing, honey?" asked Clara, bringing a cup of tea. "Trying to understand who's behind all this, and why. And have you reached any conclusion?" "Not yet, but I know I need to fight. Not just for me, but for you, for all the beneficiaries of the projects, for everything we've built." Clara's look lit up with pride. "That's my daughter. I never doubted you would find strength, even in darkness." The next morning, Rachel received an unexpected message. "Queensview Mall parking lot, 10 a.m. I have information. Come alone. GM." Gabriel Morrison. What did he know? Why so much secrecy? Distrust was natural after everything that had happened, but she decided to risk it. What else could she lose? At 10:05 a.m., Rachel was walking nervously through the underground parking lot when a dark car approached. The window lowered, revealing not Gabriel but his driver. "Miss Sanders, please get in." After a moment of hesitation, she entered the vehicle. They were driven out of the city to a discreet country house on the outskirts of New York. There she found Gabriel Morrison, accompanied by his son Peter, who was playing in the garden under the supervision of a woman Rachel didn't know. "Thank you for coming," said Gabriel, leading her to an isolated office. "We need to talk with absolute privacy." "What's going on? Why all this mystery?" "Because the situation is more serious than we imagined." Gabriel closed the door and turned on a small device on the table. A jamming device, Rachel recognized. "Paul Rivers isn't acting alone. Who else is involved?" "Marcus Alvarez, my ex-partner." The name fell like a bomb. Rachel vaguely knew the story. Marcus had been removed from the company after a disagreement with Gabriel, something related to personal and professional betrayal. But wasn't he out of the company? Officially, yes. Unofficially, he maintained influence through figureheads on the board. Paul Rivers is his main ally. And why would they attack me? What do they gain from this? Gabriel opened a laptop, showing confidential documents. 3 months ago, when you proposed the Social Impact Business Unit, I redirected 2% of the annual profits to the projects, remember? Yes, it was fundamental for us to expand the work. What wasn't disclosed is that these resources came from the reduction of a special fund that fed ghost consultancies controlled by Marcus, which laundered money for offshore accounts. Rachel felt her stomach turn. So the social projects cut off the flow of illicit money. Indirectly, you exposed a scheme that had been working for years. That's why the obsession with bringing me down. It's not just about the projects themselves. Exactly. Your fall would be just the first step. The final goal is to force me to resign, create a scandal big enough for the board to demand my exit. And why didn't you report all this to the police? Because I need concrete evidence. I have suspicions, theories, but nothing that sustains a formal accusation. Gabriel hesitated, then continued. Besides, there's Peter. Since I started investigating, I've noticed strange movements, as if we were being observed. I brought him here for safety. Rachel processed the information, connecting the dots. That anonymous email that Carlos received about the suspicious transfer probably came from someone inside who suspects the scheme, but is afraid to expose themselves directly. And now, what do we do? I'm gathering evidence. I hired private investigators. I'm mapping the flow of money. But it takes time, and you're being publicly crucified meanwhile. Rachel's frustration was palpable. I can't just wait while they destroy my reputation and terrorize my mother. You also can't confront them without concrete evidence. They have resources, influence, contacts in the press and even in the police. At that moment, Rachel's cell phone vibrated. It was Carlos. Urgent, Marina found something in the old files. Meet us at the cafe of the Central Park Mall bookstore at 2 p.m. After showing the message to Gabriel, Rachel prepared to leave. I need to go, it could be important. Be careful, don't trust easily, even people close to you. What do you mean? That whoever set this trap knows the details of the projects well, the internal procedures, your personal routine. It could be someone you don't suspect. Those words hung like a dark cloud as Rachel headed to the meeting. At the bookstore cafe, she found Marina and Carlos waiting for her at a discreet table. What did you discover? She asked, sitting down. Marina seemed nervous, constantly looking around. I found old records of strategic donations to a foundation called Future Present Institute. In the last 3 years, GM Solutions transferred more than 15 million to them, without any impact report or accountability. And what does this have to do with my case? The institute is presided over by Ana Claudia Vasconcelos, Marcus Alvarez's ex-wife, explained Carlos. And guess who approved all the transfers? Paul Rivers. But that still doesn't prove they forged documents in my mother's name, pondered Rachel. Not directly, agreed Marina. But it establishes a pattern, and there's more. I got a copy of the supposed social contract of your mother's company. Her signature was digitized from a legitimate document, her rental contract, which is filed in GM's HR. The pieces were starting to fit together. Someone with access to HR files, knowledge of social projects, and close enough to follow Rachel's movements. We need irrefutable evidence, concluded Rachel, something that not only exonerates me, but exposes the entire scheme. I have an idea, said Carlos, leaning forward. The financial system backups are stored on mirrored servers. If we can get access, we can track exactly who altered the banking data of the transfer, from which computer at what time. And how would we do that? We no longer have access to the system. I do, replied Marina, surprising them. I'm still the administrative coordinator, remember? My login is still active. A plan began to take shape. Marina would use her access to extract the system logs. Carlos, with his technical knowledge, would analyze the data, looking for evidence of manipulation. Rachel would compile all the documentation of the social projects, demonstrating the real impact and transparency in the application of resources. Tomorrow is Friday, observed Carlos. Most directors leave early for the weekend. The ideal moment would be late afternoon. While you get the digital evidence, I'll gather testimonials from the beneficiaries, decided Rachel. Teachers from the school in Queens, coordinators of the garden in Brooklyn, participants of the financial education program, real voices that no one will be able to silence. As they said goodbye, a new sense of purpose energized Rachel. The fight wasn't over, it was just really beginning. This time she wasn't fighting just for her job or reputation, but against a corrupt system that used social projects as a facade for illicit enrichment. That night, upon returning home, she found Clara talking with an elderly neighbor in the kitchen. The two were laughing while preparing fritters, a scene so everyday, so precious in its simplicity. "Honey, come eat while it's hot," called Clara. Sitting at the simple table, savoring the food made with love, Rachel felt a crystalline certainty. This was the true wealth that no one could falsify or steal. Her mother's dignity, the home built with honest work, the lives transformed by the projects. For this, it was worth fighting to the end. The next morning, she received a message from Gabriel. "I have what we need. Meet me at the country house at noon. Bring your trusted allies." The message was enigmatic, but conveyed urgency. Was it the definitive evidence they were seeking, or a new complication? While preparing to leave, Rachel looked at the photo on the wall. She and Clara at her high school graduation, both smiling with the hope of those who believe in the future. She silently promised that, regardless of what happened from then, On, she would not allow that smile to be erased by injustice. The final confrontation was approaching. The pieces of the puzzle were almost all in place. All that remained was to gather enough courage to face not just Paul Rivers or Marcus Alvarez, but an entire system that made corruption disguised as philanthropy possible. With a racing but resolute heart, Rachel picked up her purse and left. The truth, as her mother always said, has short legs, but what matters isn't how far it can run, but how many people have the courage to follow it to the end. The country house on the outskirts of New York, normally a haven of tranquility, was buzzing with activity that Saturday afternoon. Rachel arrived accompanied by Carlos and Marina, finding in the spacious office not only Gabriel but also a middle-aged woman who introduced herself as Dr. Camila Bueno, a specialist in financial crimes. "Thank you for coming," Gabriel received them with a grave expression. "What I'm going to show cannot leave this environment until we have a concrete action plan." On the central table, Dr. Camila spread a series of documents, spreadsheets, and bank reports. "In the last 3 days, we conducted a complete audit of GM Solutions' finances, focusing specifically on operations linked to the Future Present Institute. The foundation of Marcus Alvarez's ex-wife," completed Marina. "Exactly, and what we found was a sophisticated money laundering scheme." Camilla pointed to a complex diagram. "GM Solutions made apparently legitimate donations to the Institute, which then contracted ghost consultancies in tax havens. The money came back clean, to accounts controlled by Marcus and his associates, including Paul Rivers. This explains why they became so alarmed when I redirected part of the resources to real social projects," commented Gabriel. "Each dollar legitimately invested was $1 less in their scheme." Rachel studied the documents attentively. "But what about the fraud with my mother's name? How does it connect to all this?" "That was the hardest part to track," replied Carlos, opening his laptop. "But we managed. The fictitious company in your mother's name was registered using documents obtained from GM's HR files. And guess who accessed those files 2 weeks before the registration?" "Paul Rivers?" risked Rachel. "No." Carlos turned the screen, showing an access log. "Teresa Rocha, Marcus Alvarez's executive assistant for 10 years. She remained in the company after his departure, being transferred to the legal department." "That explains how they got such detailed information," concluded Marina. "Teresa had privileged access to practically everything. We've gathered all the evidence in a complete dossier," informed Gabriel. "Bank records, system logs, testimonials from Institute employees who agreed to collaborate in exchange for immunity. It's all here." "And what will we do with this?" asked Rachel. "Take it to the police?" "First, we need to ensure there's no loophole for contestation," replied Dr. Camilla. "And for that, we need a confession." Eyes turned to Gabriel, who smiled for the first time. "That's where our plan comes in. On Monday, we'll have an extraordinary board meeting. Paul believes it's to formalize my resignation and definitively end the social projects. But in reality, it will be a trap. Everything will be recorded, with judicial authorization obtained by Dr. Camilla. We'll confront them with the evidence and give them a chance to confess before the police, who will be on standby, take action." The plan was audacious, but loaded with risks. During the weekend, each detail was meticulously planned. Rachel visited the social projects, gathering video testimonials from beneficiaries. Carlos and Marina worked on the technical details, ensuring that all digital evidence was secure and incontestable. On Monday, the GM Solutions building seemed especially imposing under New York's gray sky. On the 20th floor, the board meeting room was prepared, discreet microphones installed, security cameras checked, plainclothes police strategically positioned on the floor. At 9 o'clock sharp, the board members began to arrive. Paul Rivers entered confidently, greeting colleagues with the assurance of someone who believes victory is guaranteed. Gabriel maintained a neutral expression, occasionally exchanging significant looks with Dr. Camilla, seated discreetly. In a corner, "Ladies and gentlemen," Gabriel began when everyone was seated, I convened this extraordinary meeting to discuss the future of the Social Impact Business Unit and the accusations against Rachel Sanders. Paul smiled, crossing his arms. I believe the decision is clear, considering the evidence of resource diversion. About that evidence, I would like to bring some clarifications. Gabriel made a signal and the door opened. Rachel entered, accompanied by Carlos and Marina, to the general astonishment. What does this mean? Protested Paul. She's removed during the investigation. Investigation that just gained new contours, replied Gabriel, indicating that Dr. Camilla should take the floor. With surgical precision, the specialist began presenting the collected evidence. Documents, bank transfers, recovered emails, everything pointing to the scheme orchestrated by Marcus Alvarez and executed by Paul and his allies on the board. This is absurd, exploded Paul when the siege was closing. You're trying to incriminate me to protect this girl. Curious that you mention incrimination, commented Gabriel with calculated calm, because we have something interesting here. He played an audio recording where Paul instructed Teresa to create a convincing problem for the uppity intern, something that not even Gabriel can ignore. The room plunged into tense silence. Paul's face alternated between white and red while other board members shifted uncomfortably in their chairs. It was never about the social projects, was it? Rachel finally asked. It was about the money you could no longer divert. You don't understand anything, girl, replied Paul with contempt. Companies like this function in a larger system. There have always been agreements, arrangements, ways to make money circulate. You're confessing to a money laundering crime in a recorded meeting, warned Dr. Camilla. Panic finally hit Paul, who looked around seeking support and finding only shocked or avoidant expressions. Marcus guaranteed it was undetectable, he murmured, defeated. He said nobody would ever connect the dots. You underestimated the dedication of a team committed to the truth, replied Gabriel, making a new signal. The door opened again, and two plainclothes police officers identified themselves. Paul Rivers, you are detained for questioning about the crimes of fraud, document forgery, and money laundering. In the days that followed, the case dominated the headlines of business newspapers. $1 million diversion scheme dismantled. At GM Solutions, ex-partner orchestrated fraud through charitable foundation. Real social projects were the trigger for discovering scheme. Preventive detention of Paul Rivers and Marcus Alvarez was ordered, while others involved collaborated with justice in exchange for reduced sentences. Rachel was not only reinstated to the company, but officially promoted to Director of Social Impact. In her first action in the position, she organized an event for the Queens community, where the public school received a fully equipped technology center. It's not about charity, she explained to the journalists present. It's about social justice and real opportunities. Each child in this neighborhood has the same potential as any other. They just need the right tools. 6 months later, GM Solutions had transformed into a reference of authentic corporate social responsibility. The projects expanded to 10 communities in New York and were beginning to be replicated in other cities. The app developed by Carlos, now leader of his own social technology department, connected thousands of people to work and development opportunities. On a sunny afternoon, Rachel was visiting the community garden in Brooklyn, accompanied by Gabriel and his son Peter, who at 11 years old showed genuine interest in the social projects. My dad told me how you saved the company, commented the boy as they harvested organic tomatoes. You're like a superhero, Rachel laughed. Nothing like that, I just did what was right with the help of many good people. Still, you were brave, insisted Peter. You and your mom could come over for dinner sometime, you and your mom. The innocent invitation made Gabriel smile, exchanging a significant look with Rachel. In recent months, the relationship between them had evolved from professional respect to a genuine friendship, with possibilities that both were beginning to cautiously explore. That would be great, she replied. My mom makes a custard pudding that you'll love. At the end of the day, back in the small apartment in Queens, which she now shared with Clara, officially retired from her roles as cafeteria worker and manicurist, Rachel observed the city through the window. The lights gradually turned on, transforming the urban landscape. What are you thinking about, honey? asked Clara, joining her. About how everything has changed. And how at the same time we remain the same. That's how it should be. We change the world without losing our essence. Rachel hugged her mother, feeling the strength that had always been there, sustaining her in each step of the journey. Together they contemplated the city where they had once been invisible and now left their mark. Not a mark of power or wealth, but of silent and true transformation. The one that begins when someone decides that holding their head high is not just a gesture of pride, but of responsibility to all who will come after. Dear listeners, we hope that Rachel Sanders' story has touched your hearts. To continue this journey of emotions and transformations, we've prepared a special playlist with equally captivating narratives about ordinary people performing extraordinary feats. Find it here, clicking to your left. If this story about dignity, justice, and the power of perseverance resonated with you, don't forget to subscribe to our channel and give this video a like. Every day we bring unique stories that explore the complexities of American life in its diverse facets. Next week, get to know the journey of a fisherman from the northeast coast who revolutionized his village's economy with sustainable fishing methods. It's another story that proves how true transformation